everyone, welcome to a new episode of Candid Conversation, and today we have Lisa Snyder. She is from losingyourparents.org. Her intention is to help others who have lost their parents through death or any other form of abandonment, is to hopefully help them heal through the grieving process, which is never easy. So here we have her today, and I'm so excited to speak with her and get her story, and hopefully she will have a lot of wisdom to help you and wherever you are in your inner journey. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reaching out and for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to have you. So, Lisa, for our audience, I just want to kind of get a little bit of your background. As I mentioned earlier, I found Lisa. I was just doing some reading online, and I came across one of her articles on a health website dealing with abandonment and grief. Lisa lost both of her parents at a very young age. At 22, I believe, close to your 23rd birthday, you lost your father, and then at 27, again, you lost your mother. So that, I can't imagine what that must have been like for you and how you were able to cope with it.
Yeah. So it's interesting that this is, that we're talking now, because I just celebrated my 33rd birthday, and my dad had died the day before my 23rd birthday.
Wow.
And so it's actually been 10 years since he's been gone. And so it's an interesting process to be a witness to. Like, a third of your life has gone by. A third of my life has gone by, and now I haven't had my dad. So a little background is that I grew up in New Jersey, in Princeton Junction, New Jersey, and my dad was a video engineer for CBS television for 20 years. Wow. Yeah, it was really cool. He actually won an Emmy with like a team of people for the NFL Today, which he was very, very proud of, and we were all very proud of him for that. And my mom, she worked in banks for most of her life, and then there were some times where she, just stayed at home. I felt like very loved and taken care of while I was growing up. And so I know that's not everybody's experience, but that was mine. They always supported me for the most part. I came out as I've gone back and forth. I've identified as bisexual, and then I've identified as lesbian, and then there's like word that's thrown around queer. And so I came out to my parents and was kind of outed at 17, and so they weren't as supportive at that time, but they never abandoned me. Like, stopped loving me, stopped talking to me. There was definitely some difficult times. So I just want to preface that, knowing like I had a good childhood and I had positive memories and positive experiences.
So can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
Since you mentioned about you coming out at 17, you said you used the word you were outed. Do you mind sharing real quick how that came about? Did you come out, or they found out, or how was that process for you? Because I'm sure there's some of our viewers who maybe are going through that right now.
Yes. Well, I had a girlfriend in high school, and I guess we thought we were being sneaky by like closing doors and stuff, but I guess we weren't. And so her parents are like way more what I thought was snoopy at the time, but maybe they're more protective. I don't know, So they found out, and they asked my girlfriend at the time, straight out, is you guys together? She said yes, and she was very upset that she was being outed. And then her parents nonstop called my parents, I'm not even kidding you, 50 times. We had caller ID. I remember that. I was so scared. Like, they're trying to meet, And they ended up having a meeting, and then my dad was like, I was at a friend's house, he's like, get home now. And the next day, we ended up having like this conversation, like, we know you guys are together. They told me it was gross, and my mom told me I was going to go to hell, and I was like, oh God. Like, but I was kind of like, for my age, I was really, I don't know, I was very defiant. Like, I was walking on my own path, and I didn't really take no for an answer. Like, yes, we I didn't pick her up from school anymore, but I definitely saw her, you know, like in school, and we snuck around, and, you know, we actually had a sit-down meeting with my parents. We're like, listen, this is like who we are. You know, we love each other. This isn't bad, you know.
Right.
I know you guys are surprised, and of course, I was my dad's only child, and I have a half brother. My mom had 2 children, and so I never looked at it from either of their perspectives. You know, I was a teenager, and so I didn't really think maybe they're hurting about this because they had a different, you know, thought or different ideas about how they wanted to be in my life or whatever. But it ended up all being okay. Like, my dad was, you know, he wasn't like asking about my girlfriend, wasn't like, that's gross, you know, anymore.
Did you feel good? Do you feel now, looking back at it, that the way that it worked out was better than if you would have kept it and later on years try to then come out?
I'm really glad it happened when I was young, because I feel like there's some figuring out who you are, and if you can, in the middle of figuring out who you are, actually communicate pieces of that to people you love, I think that that's a really amazing, beautiful thing. And especially now, like in 2014, like, nobody cares anymore. I mean, there's parents that care, you know, but like, and I'm generalizing, but way more people are accepting and loving. Sure. And now the government is like, oh, you're people? Okay, great. We're gonna, you know, let you get married now.
Yeah.
So, I know it's really scary to come out, and I would highly recommend having some support on some level. If there's someone to talk to, like even a safe place to stay, you know, if you're not sure how it's going to go. You know, ultimately, my mom didn't really come around until when my dad was on his deathbed. He was like, you know, you need to really accept Lisa for who she is. And, you know, if you don't, you're not going to have a relationship with her. And I think that she really took that in, because my dad's like, he's not going to be here anymore. And these are the things that he's saying to her, you know, right, on his deathbed. So, so yeah, so that's the overview of coming out. I'm out to everybody. I am who I am, and
that's beautiful.
I love it.
I think you just made a great point there. I think that the biggest thing is self-acceptance, because even coming out to your parents might be a difficult part, but I think sometimes people suffer. Even like you said, today in 2014, it's much more acceptable. But I still think that I find so many people who still in this day and age have a hard time coming out, and I think it has more to do with maybe their own self-acceptance of it, maybe of them, you know, wanting to be a certain way and not. But I personally think that it's just best to be able to just be who you are, because it just saves you so much mental anguish. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't hurt the people around you, because I think that when you keep secrets, you start building all these secret lives. There's no way that you can ever be authentically yourself and have peace within if you're living double lives.
It's true. It feels horrible to lie, like, to yourself, and then on top of it, if you're even aware that you're lying, or that you're keeping a part of yourself away from the world, it's like you're not giving the world the gift that is you inside. And it's really painful, and it takes up a lot of energy.
Yeah,
you know,
I can only imagine.
It takes up a lot of mental and emotional energy. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that aspect of yourself with us.
Sure. You're welcome.
Was it expected that your dad was going to die, like that you knew he was sick for a long time, or was it sudden?
Yeah, both of my parents had cancer. And so my dad had Hodgkin's disease lymphoma, and my mom had leukemia, AML leukemia. And so he was sick for like about 1.5 years. It was a long process, and it was a roller coaster ride. And it was like, you know, first we thought it was going to be fine, and then it wasn't going to be fine, and then we thought it was going to be okay. And then I remember the day where the doctor said you have like 1 month to live, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is my life. Like, I can't believe that this is really happening.
Wow. And so now that you said that, what you can remember, how was your dad when he first found out? Like, do you remember his reaction or the way that he was processing?
both of my parents were kind of similar. They didn't share their feelings a lot. And it was hard, like growing up in a household like that, because I really wanted to. And that's one of the reasons why I use feelings with everything I do, and self-expression, is because I feel like it's the access point for me and for a lot of other people, is to move through stuff. So, I remember my dad being super positive up until the end. He was telling jokes, and he was really just trying to live life to the fullest, even though he could barely get out of bed. And I actually have a video of him a few weeks before he died that I took, and I have it on my website, which I can repost maybe when I post this interview. A link to that video, and I have one of my mom too, but mostly my dad being saying he loved me and just trying to have some positive last words. But I was actually present for both my parents' transitions. I was sleeping in the bed next to my dad in the hospital, and then when my mom died, I actually watched her last breath. Wow. So it was really intense.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that would be like. I have so many questions.
Ask away.
So, okay, I'm gonna backtrack, because you say a lot of things in between that kind of get my little light bulb going. Do you think, when you mentioned that the doctor said you have 1 month to live, what is your take on having been through this whole process of life to death, of when doctors tell someone, when they set a date, do you think that does something mentally to a person where it kind of sentenced them more to the illness, versus if they didn't give a specific date or time, or put a time frame on it?
I definitely feel I like that wording as sentencing, but it's also, nobody really knows how long someone's going to live. They can only guess. I guess in the case of my dad, they guessed right.
But do you think it has an effect? Because I sometimes think of course, this is just me and contemplation of these things. Because I really believe in the power of the mind, and I've read studies and different things, and obviously it's not the case in every situation, but sometimes I think that if you tell someone, hey, you have 1 month to live, and it's obviously coming from a doctor, and we believe in medicine, and of course the doctor has a knowledge that we don't, so sometimes I feel like maybe giving a time frame automatically already sets that in the subconscious of a person. And I believe, the body is tied to the mind. And so when the mind believes that it's going to die, it's going to fulfill that date. Not obviously in every case, and I don't know if this is true. This is just in contemplation. But I kind of wanted to just throw this idea to you and kind of see how it resonates, or what you think, or if you've ever thought about it.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. And I guess it depends on the type of illness and how far along things actually are. But the mind is very powerful. There's a really awesome blog. I think it's my mom's not having chemo, MUM, my mom's not having chemo. And it's written by this daughter who witnessed her mom deciding to not have chemo and to do everything alternative. And her mom was actually a survivor. She's a cancer survivor now. And I definitely believe in the power of the mind. And I have a hard time with modern medicine, Western and Eastern medicine. I feel like the combination of the two of them is really the best solution for healing. But yeah, when someone puts a date on it, or even says you're in the 3rd stage of cancer, your mind is probably wow, I have cancer, and you're reinforcing that you have cancer. I think that my dad probably had the best scenario of surviving, actually, because Hodgkin's disease lymphoma is actually pretty curable, but he had some diabetes issues too. And so that's a really interesting question, and that's a whole world of thoughts I have about it. I feel yes. Short answer is yes. The mind plays a huge role in the way that the body acts with healing. And when you believe you're going to die, yeah, like, and you're really taking that in from one or two people, like it affects the way that you heal. Maybe they say, yeah, you're going to die and you only have 1 month, but maybe you could have had 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't think an answer that we can say. This is, I think it's good to just get different perspectives.
hmm
So, okay, so moving from that. So you said your dad, was taking it pretty well, doing the best that he can towards the end of it.
hmm
For you, when you first found out, how was that for you? Because you were 22 going on 23. There's different, I think, different stages in our life. It affects us differently. I personally, I'm not, when I was 16, 15 or 6, I think 15 going on 16, my mother got diagnosed with cancer. And then at 17, she had a malpractice on her that almost killed her and had her in the hospital for a year. So I know at 17 how that was for me. How was it for you being 22 and finding out that your dad, was going to pass when you first found out?
I always knew it was a possibility, like with him being sick, but I don't think I could really wrap my mind around it. When I did find out, I was incredibly sad and disappointed, and I felt cheated. Like, I guess it's a selfish feeling, but I felt cheated. Like, I don't get to have my dad and all these other people do. And he's never going to know me as a full adult. Like, I was just coming out of college. I was out of college for like 8 or 9 months at the time. And I just felt also like a little bit of the end of my college wasn't fun because he was sick. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's a selfish thing. Like, yeah, my dad's sick. I should just be there for him. And I did the best I could. And then as soon as I left school, I went to live with him and, took care of him and took him to chemo and all that stuff. But I just felt like this is not my life, but it is. And so when I found out, I was just really sad and disappointed and hurt and scared. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I tried to prepare myself. And I think I was way more prepared for my mom going.
Well, yeah, because you had experienced it with your father. How did you, when you said prepare, because you pointed out, you were doing the best you can because you were still balancing school, which I think is really important, because I remember when I was 17, and I remember vividly being in my room, not knowing whether my mother was going to live or die. And I remember just praying because I was at the brink of being really depressed and saying, this is either going to go two ways. I'm either going to lose it and I'm going to give up on life. And I was in my last senior year and I'm like, I'm not going to graduate if I allow myself to go down this dark road, or I just need to find strength somewhere to just manage life the best I can. And you said, you were going to school and still, being able to manage that. And I think that's important for anybody going through something similar is, as hard as it is, it's not that it's selfish, but you still have to kind of maintain yourself to a certain degree to not lose your life, because I think it's very easy. It's a very slippery slope to just kind of give up on life. And I think once you get to that point, it can just really go downhill from there. So how did you find the balance? Like you were saying, you were doing the best to prepare yourself. So for you, what was that preparing?
Well, it was different with each parent. With my dad, I just tried to have access. Again, I was younger, and I didn't know what to expect really, but I just tried to have access to friends that I could talk to that allowed me to just talk about anything, and just people I felt safe with. So something to hold on to, I'd say, be very, very grounded. Sometimes it's just knowing that you have a bed to sleep in and somewhere, food to eat. And sometimes it's as simple as that. Preparing yourself. I tried to I actually wrote my dad a letter and I read it to him. And so, cause I knew he was going to go. And so I'm like, this is my opportunity to thank him for life and for, for all the things he did for me in my life. In a letter, trying to wrap it up. And also, us not being like being very loving, but not being like super emotional. Like, I'm going to tell you my feelings all the time. It was not easy. With my mom, it was very different. Like, I actually got like psychic information from my dad that she wasn't going to be here anymore. And 3 weeks later, after that experience, she was diagnosed with leukemia. So I was like prepared, and I was prepared in a different way. I was prepared like spiritually. Like, my dad came to me in a spirit form, which I'd never experienced like something like that, like when I was awake. Dreams are different, and, dream visits and dreams are, we can have a whole conversation about that. But, so when that happened and I found out, I was like, oh my God, like, is this it? And I thought about, what we just talked about like the mind. And I'm like, if I think about my mom living, is she going to live, or am I going to like accept this information that I've received spiritually? And so I tried a little bit of both the whole time. And then when she was given, I guess they said a couple of weeks to a couple of months. It was like this span. It wasn't like this, you have 1 month left. And it was confusing because we thought that there was, that she was in remission. And then they were like, actually, there's like a big tumor wrapped around your insides. And we're like, how did you miss that? Like, so, I just tried to tell my mom that I loved her. At some point in time, I remember like climbing in her hospital bed and hugging and crying and saying, I'm going to miss you. And it was so surreal. Like, I was so like, I can't believe I'm saying I'm going to miss you to my mom. Like, this is weird. And at some point she was like, I'm sorry, you're not going to have parents anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, this sucks so bad. I actually, at the time, this is where I started blogging, not on losing your parents, but I had a Caring Bridge account. I don't know if they still do this, but Caring Bridge gives free blog accounts to those who are having like, struggles with their family and they want to communicate with people. And so I was expressing myself that way, and that was really helpful. And again, friends, and I played a lot of music for my mom at the end. And I just tried to be open to like hearing her, because I do believe in life after death. And I just try to be open to like communicating with her. I even was like, okay, if you go, like, are you going to come back as something? She was like, you'll know it's me. I mean, how could she know what she's going to come back as, or like, how she's going to communicate? You don't know. But, after my dad died, like literally it was 2 hours later, I went home to the apartment that we shared, and like my keyboard, which I had a PC at the time, I have a Mac now. My keyboard was like the caps lock and the num lock were blinking on, off, on, off. And the lights had gone out, and I walked back into my room, and like the song Time Is Ticking Out was like accidentally, playing on repeat. And so all of these things, plus 1,000 other more things that have happened since then, have given me some, knowledge that I feel like that there's life after death. And so the long story short of like, how did I prepare myself? Like, you can't really fully prepare yourself, but you can be really open to like loving your parent as best you can and loving yourself. And I think the biggest thing is like to be your own best friend, is because you're not going to have your parents to depend on anymore. None of us really will at some point. I had to learn it early, and I did the best I did the best I could with what I had, and I continue to try and work on my healing.
That's beautiful, because that's all we have. We only can do the best that we can with where we're at and what we have. And I think that that's an important piece of information for people to remember, that you just got to do the best you can with what you have. And absolutely, I agree with you 100% about being your own best friend. That's a lesson I learned early on, and I realized it in life. Life is going to call you to stand on your own many times. And and you have to be prepared to face life on your own, because as many people as we have, friends, family, people are here 1 minute and they're gone the next. And we came into this experience alone, and you're going to leave technically alone, even though we're never alone, because I believe that we're connected to everything. But yeah, that's good. beautiful information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned about having a psychic experience with your father after he passed, that he presented himself in spirit form. How was that for you, since that was the first time you experienced that? What was your reaction? What did he say?
It was amazing. I knew it was him because I could feel him, and that was like a whole thing I'd never felt before. I knew it was him because he was like sending me a message. It wasn't like he was speaking. It wasn't like his human form it was like a light. And he said, you need to spend more time with your mom, because you don't know how much longer she's going to be around. And I started racking my brain, like really taking that information in and saying to myself, like, how can I spend more time with my mom? And so my 27th birthday was coming up, and I was like, I'm going to have a birthday party in New York City, and I'm going to invite her, and like, you know, not just like have just a friend party. I'm going to invite my family, and she's going to come, and I want to spend more time with her. How can I do that? And so she'd actually come to my birthday party, and then on a train ride home, she had felt lightheaded and went to the hospital and ended up going and being diagnosed that following weekend. So the experience in itself, it was a beautiful one that I'll never forget, like ever. And it's never happened like that since. Other things have happened, but not that kind of message, that kind of direct, light, spirit form that I know was him. Like there's nobody else it could have been. Like it just felt like it.
Yeah, some of those things, as much as we try to explain with our rational mind, those are things you just have to, innately within you. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. And
it was.
You mentioned that your parents both weren't very vocal in sharing their feelings. And I read a lot in your blog, and as you're speaking now, that a lot of your healing process has been through self-expression.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for maybe young parents who are now just becoming parents? Because that's something that I totally agree with, and it's one of the things that I feel is the number one problem in our world today is that we don't give enough emphasis or importance on the inner world, which is our emotional world. Self-expression, and that is how you get to know who you are, and that's where the compassion and the love and empathy really generates from. So coming from parents that weren't very self-expressive to you finding your own voice and using self-expression to heal yourself and to grow, what advice do you have for maybe parents that are now just becoming parents who have an opportunity to do things different if maybe they themselves aren't very emotional creatures?
That is a great question. And it's something that I think about often because I do want to have children. I think the most important thing is to allow for the space for a human to feel whatever it is that they're feeling, because it's all valid. It may not, and to try not to be emotionally attached to it, which is really difficult because we take a lot of things personally, and that's where we get in the way of being able to connect with another human being. We're not hearing what they're actually saying. We're like interpreting it into something else, we're making stuff up in our heads and feeling bad about it and whatever. And so just to somehow create the space in your home that allows for, for some kind of self-expression. Now, I don't know how that goes with like different ages and all that stuff. I can't say that, because it's probably going to be different, but I'll give you an example. Actually, my fiance, Catherine, today, she came into my office and she was like, I'm mad. And I could have been like, oh, that sucks. Sorry you're feeling mad, But I was like, ooh, do you want to draw on my board? And I'm looking over here right now, and there's like a frowny face that she drew, and then I drew a picture of a stick figure, like sending her love. And, sometimes it's just giving someone the space to like either talk it out, write it out. Journaling, I think, is really important, like having a personal journal. Something I've used and I think is going to continue to evolve is like technology is an audio recording or video, you know, just being able to like express yourself. Art is a big one. Channeling feelings through art, because, you know, it's just your relationship with the canvas or your relationship with whatever art and medium is yours. It's your personal conversation with that. And it's, you know, it may not be like talking directly to a parent, but I just remember feeling, and it's a constant thing I'm working on. I just remember feeling like my parents told me I could tell them anything, but when I did, they rejected what I had to say. They didn't want to hear it. They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. And I had to like forgive them because they didn't have the tools and resources to provide me what they thought they could provide me in that level. So that's additionally why I'm like, I push so hard for self-expression and feelings in myself and other people. So just trying to be as supportive as you can. And I don't know if you know who her name is.
Say that again. You broke up a little.
Her name is Brene
Brown. Is she the one? Yeah, she's the one that talks about vulnerability. She did a TED talk, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I loved her. I love that talk of hers.
Yes, she does vulnerability. She works with vulnerability and also shame. And she's a shame worker, basically. That's what she calls herself. And I love her. I think that she is a great resource for language and for tools to like give someone the space, including children, to be who they are. You know, like this is going to be a whole thing. Like when I have kids, I'm going to be like, oh my God, Lisa, what did you say that day on the video? You know, it's really important. I want to have that closeness and to override your own personal BS in order to have connection and to just clearly communicate, you know, like I'm feeling this way. Take responsibility too, like to teach your children to take responsibility for their feelings, because that's the other thing that happens is that we point it at everybody else. It's you made me feel this way. Yep, that person made me feel this way. But the truth is that the feelings come from here, and that we're experiencing them on the level of like being human. So, you know, I'm feeling angry. What's making me feel angry? Oh, I'm feeling unsafe. How do I feel safer? Let's help each other across the bridge, you know, instead of like pushing each other away. I really try so hard, and it's not been easy, but I'm getting better at it.
No, definitely. That is a difficult road, and I think it's one of strength. See, in our society, we've been conditioned to believe that emotions is a sign of weakness. And for me, I've always said that it's the opposite. I think that emotions is a sign of strength. Actually, those who avoid emotions is a sign of weakness to me, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of strength, a lot of courage to go into those emotions, to be the bigger person when you find yourself in a situation that's not pleasant, that somebody hurts you. You know, to rise above all the BS, like you mentioned, takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. And to process your feelings and the self-hate and the cycles you go through and the patterns in the block, it's hard work.
It is. It's not easy. And so you have to be committed to wanting more in your life.
Yep.
You know, if what you have right now like doesn't feel good, you have to be committed to like saying, hey, this doesn't feel good, and what can I do better? What can I do differently? Like I'm kind of like a mover and a shaker. If something doesn't feel good, or if I feel boxed in by something, I'm like, how do I get out of this box? You know, like what do I need to do to feel better? Because I gotta live here. You know what I mean? You gotta live there. I gotta live here. This is my temple. This is my home.
Yes.
No matter where I'm physically living, this is my house. And so if this does not feel good,
nothing feels good.
Like nothing feels good. And some people are used to feeling bad. And let me tell you something. Like when I was a teenager, I wanted to commit suicide. Like I really felt like sad all the time. And I was very depressed. And you know, actually when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, I think that's when I kind of turned a corner, because I was like, oh my God, like life ends, and I know that, but now here it is, you know, and it made me want to have a positive life, because I don't want to be the kind of person that runs around and feels crappy all the time, you know?
It's not a way to live.
Bad. No, and I don't want other people to live like that either, you know? And so that's part of the work that I'm doing right now, is like people who are feeling grief and sadness, like to know that there's, there's an other side to the bridge, but you have to feel to heal. You have to be the change.
I like that. You got to feel to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And, you said something now that I want to point out, which was brilliant. I believe, and also from my own experience, and now you're sharing your experience with me and us, I believe is sometimes we're placed in certain events, like our parents or people play certain roles in order for us to grow on a spiritual level. We don't know the contracts. This is because I believe in afterlife, and we make a lot of different arrangements before we come into this human experience. So you were depressed before your dad got sick, and I think a lot of us, when we're young, it's really hard to try to figure out who you are in this world and find that self-love and acceptance in a world that does not make it easy for that. So it's very easy for teenagers to fall into depression. I myself was in the same place that you're talking about. But having your father get ill the same way that my mom got ill, I feel that that's what helped me, as sad as it was, to see my mom go through the struggles and all the health problems that she had. It felt bad for me to admit this to myself, but deep down within me, when I contemplated, I felt that my mother got sick in order for me to grow and to push me to that next level of being able to become my higher self, because it was when she got sick that I was really forced to look deep within myself and say, hey, like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be? Are you going to let this, define you? And are you going to lose your shit? Or are you going to rise above it and find what you're really made of? And I feel that you sharing that is kind of what happened to you. You were in this depression, and experiencing that, it forced you to dig deep and really find out what you're made of.
Yeah. I'm glad that we can share this experience together and share our stories. I think that they're really important growth spurts for us, it sounds like. That's exactly what happened. I just kind of snapped out of it. I was like, really, like, what depression is like being associated with a thought pattern in your mind, and you're not letting the emotion like come, and then you're not letting the emotion go. Like you're letting it come, but you're letting it sit around. It has to go. Like energy is emotions are energy in motion, so you have to kind of like let it come in and let it go. And I didn't have the tools or resources, and that's okay. But yes, my dad getting sick kind of snapped me into reality of like, wow, I need to be present. And that's what's really missing a lot of the time is presence in people's lives. Because when you're present, there's actually, it may sound weird, but it's not, you don't have a problem. Like you can problem solve, but like, you're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about the past. You're just being here. And that's what death, I think, sometimes brings, is like presence, or the thought of death, or the fear of death is, and that's actually why I think there's a lot of things out there that people like to do, that make them feel alive and very present, like sports, like some people are like to go skiing, or they like to ride a bicycle or whatever it is. And those are healthy, outlets to be present. But I think that it's like it assists people in like becoming present. Some people can do meditation. That's other people's meditation, is like that kind of movement. But yeah, that experience overall was a game changer for me.
Yeah, and I think that anybody listening to this has to kind of really be mindful and see that certain things in our life that seem like tragedy at the moment are really the biggest blessings, even though they come in a form that is not so great, because everything is serving for our own growth. And I believe that the only reason for us to be here is because we're here to discover who we are individually, so then collectively we can come together and shift into something even greater than what we currently are in this human experience. But you have to look at every situation in your life and know that it's serving you, even what we perceive as bad. But like you said, if you're not present, and most of us live in our minds the entire time, we're always in our heads. So I love what you said that about how emotions are just those thoughts that you keep locked in. And it definitely is, because when you're constantly thinking about, you know, how terrible you feel, or that self-loathing, that kind of hate that sometimes we have when we're young. You just keep festering in that energy. So, great points. And so moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about your spiritual path. I know that I think your father was Jewish and your mother was Catholic. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I read that you always consider yourself to be more spiritual even from a young age. So what's been your spiritual path up to now, and how has that helped you feel in your life every day?
Well, yes. So my dad was Jewish, my mom was Catholic. They decided to raise me Catholic. At some point in time, I had a choice, like when I was a teenager, but I was told I had to go to school for, 7 more years, and I was like, no way. I felt like I met somebody while I was in college. I dated somebody while I was in college who was on a spiritual path, and I felt like, oh my God, there's like a whole world here. And she, who actually has transitioned and is now we don't talk. I don't talk to them, but they were actually a significant part of my spiritual growth, and I have to sort of like be honest about that. Because I felt like they gave me a lot of doorways to walk through and a lot of things that they were already interested in, and all I did was like kind of like walk through the door of what they were trying on, like whether it was like, first it was yoga. I mean, it started with like super basic stuff, excuse me. Super basic stuff like yoga and like drinking water. It sounds like, what's spiritual about drinking water? But I thought it was silly. I thought drinking water and being healthy was ridiculous. Like, I mean, it's nice to be healthy and whatever, but hand me that Diet Pepsi, So it was really tiny. It was a small thing. And I met some other people, and I just allowed myself to meet other people who had like-minded openness, and the conversations just sort of evolved, and I just felt like there was a whole world that I didn't totally understand. But what really pushed me over the edge was the day that my dad died. I was like, I woke up and he wasn't there anymore, and I was like, there's no way he just kind of left. I don't believe it. I don't believe he just, because his body was there. I saw it,
Yeah.
And then his life, he just didn't have the life in him anymore. So I was very, very curious. And so what I did was I picked up a book called The Real Truth About Death by P.M.H. Atwater. And she actually died 3 times and came back to life to talk about it. And then she interviewed over 3,000 people who had near-death experiences. So
Wow.
She talked about what she saw. She talked about things that she saw when she was physically dead, like when people, like paramedics, were trying to revive her. Her bobbing up to the top and bobbing up to the light source, and then the things that she saw the next 2 times that she died, and they were like, things that people have talked about, that cartoons and stuff make fun of, like tunnels and light and deity at the end of Jesus or Buddha or whoever. And she said that she got answers to like a lot of questions, and then she interviewed people who also had the same experience. So that whole, like when my dad died, and I was incredibly curious about, why are the lights on my computer flashing back and forth? Like, why do I feel like he's here? I got some weird message on my phone. I think I took a picture of it a long time ago. I don't know where it is, but it said something about being home. You is home. It was like spelled all weird, but it was like, it wasn't even like a text message. It was just like old school, like 2004 phones, It really sparked my curiosity, and I never stopped believing that there's life after this life. I don't believe that this physical world is all there is. You can't tell me that this is it, because I don't believe it.
Well, Lisa, I mean, it's just been amazing to talk to you. You have so much insight, and I've immensely enjoyed and learned so much from you.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you want to share with our viewers Any wisdom that you have? I mean, there's so much in this conversation already, but
Yeah. I think, I'm getting goosebumps. That's good. I think that, like, a couple of tidbits is that no matter what, if you've lost a parent or both parents, like, loneliness is part of the process, and that you're going to want to fill that hole with, like, a bunch of crap. But you're going to have to try and, like, turn yourself on and be aware of, like, the fact that it exists and the fact that you're going to want to fill it up. And I talk about some of these things on my blog, losingyourparents.org, like, about the hole in your heart and, like, being conscious and, like, trying not to fill it up with crap. And by crap, I mean, like, doing drugs and, like, drinking and smoking and, like, unhealthy habits.
yeah, trying to numb yourself.
Yes, it's the numbing that's not healthy, because I had somebody come to me a couple of years ago and she was like, I haven't mourned my mom at all. It's been 9 years. And being able to feel is really hard and really tough, but finding that place, like having someone to talk to, a therapist, having an outlet like art, music, journaling, etc., like having outlets for your feelings and a space. Also, I have so many things to share, and I'm actually wanted to share that I'm writing a book right now.
Okay,
and I'm
wonderful.
going to be, I can let you know what, like, when it's done. It's like so still in the beginning stages, but I have so much stuff to give and to provide people that it's all coming together, and has been for years, but now I finally have the space and time to put it together. So I can't wait to share that when it's done.
Oh, and I can't wait to see it. And I definitely believe that you have a lot to offer. I mean, this is exactly why I love doing these candid conversations, because it's always so refreshing and it fills my heart with so much inspiration and just like energy when I'm able to exchange with like another like-minded individual who isn't afraid to explore their emotions and is constantly doing that inner work that's so hard. And you going through what you've gone through and losing both of your parents, not just one, is something that's very difficult. And here you are today, a strong, beautiful woman, you know, who you didn't allow this to break you. It made you even stronger. And there's a lot of wisdom that you gain when you go through things like that. So you have a lot to offer. And anybody who's going through similar situations, I know that they can find a lot of information on your website. I'm going to have it up on my site as well. And please, when you have your book, let us know. I would love to share it.
Thank you so much for inviting me to talk, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yes, let's definitely keep in touch. I think you're going to be doing a lot of great things.
Thank you so much.
Sending you lots of love, honey. Bye.
Right back to you. Bye.